Good evening, friends. I welcome you all to the Hindu and the Businessline editorial analysis on 2nd June 2022. The stories which we are going to discuss are from the GDP and GVA figures analyzed and the analysis of the tourism aeroplane crash in Nepal and the award winning the Asha workers, and lastly the capital punishment discussion in the constitutional bench of the Supreme Court from the Hindu. And from Businessline we are going to discuss the economic advisory on the adoption of a daily income scheme for urban workers in the lines of MNRGA and the eco consent aeroplane booking, and lastly the central government's 8-year streak and its achievement. The first editorial is to be discussed is from the Hindu. The editorial is titled Choppy Waters. What is this choppy waters? The Hindu editorial discusses that the tides of economic recovery after the COVID has not been able to lift the ships which are just anchored in the shores of economic recovery. The waters are choppy with the recession, the world recession coming around, and the war woes are just keeping the waters choppy. Hence, the tides of economic recovery have not touched the economic recovery in India from the figures emerging from the 2021-22 data released on Tuesday. The GVA has grown by 8.1 percentage and GDP by 8.7 percentage in 2021-22 financial year. What does this mean? What is GDP? GDP is the gross domestic product. It is the sum total of all products and services produced in a country in a financial year. What is gross value added? Gross value added is the sum total of all products and services produced in the country plus the taxes on the products and services minus the government subsidies. And analysis into the figures show that the recovery in manufacturing sector have been very encouraging in the 3 quarters of 2021 to 22, but in quarter 4 it contracted by 0.2 percentage. The editorial is complaining that this is not a V-shaped recovery. What is a V-shaped recovery? V-shaped recovery is the shape of a graph which is having a V shape. From the growth, when the economic growth plummets, it goes down to the bottom, and when the economy recovery starts, it goes up and reaches the pinnacle. And the shape of this graph is a V shape. From the recovery down to the bottom, and from there just taking a linear upward movement. This is the V shape. The job creating sectors have fallen by 11 percentage. So the GVA figures are not showing any kind of V-shaped recovery is what the editorial says. The next article I am going to discuss is about Nepal's short takeoff and landing tourism. The short takeoff and landing tourism has become a great danger point for Nepal. The article is titled Safety First. Nepal is flouting all kinds of rules while it takes to tourism. In tourism, the short takeoff and landing flights are a great draw. Recently, an aircraft has the name of the aircraft is Tara de Havilland. The article points out that of the 19 accidents occurred in Nepal, the 16 of which come from STOL operations, that is short takeoff and landing operations. Friends, I need not tell you, the Nepal's terrain is in such a way that it is a very high, heavy mountainous region, and sometimes the 90-degree curving or slanting of the flight is necessary to make the flight adventure very much thrilling. So, the STOL flights are a great attraction among the tourists visiting Nepal. However, the safety operations are not being looked into. The flight goes at a height of 13,000 feet, where the passengers need oxygen, and Nepal government is not taking precautions on this front. The next article I am going to discuss is about Asha workers' achievements, which is being recognized by the World Health Organization by awarding the Asha work. The Global Leaders Award 2022 goes to Asha workers. Asha workers mean accredited social health activists. The article is a very long article which lauds the works of Asha workers during pandemic times when they used to visit houses and render a very remarkable service. The Asha workers serve the community health services, which is a very remarkable. The Asha workers' services on primary health care is praiseworthy. Primary health care means maternal and child health care, including immunization, the health services for hypertension and tuberculosis patients, and Asha workers program started in 2005 to 6 in rural health sector, and in 2013 it was extended to urban areas. The Asha workers in rural areas, the program started as a part of National Rural Health Mission, and in 2013 the urban health programs were started under the National Urban Health Program. The article goes on to explain how this concept of Asha workers emerged. It comes from Chhattisgarh's Mithanin, one program which covers 250 people and 50 households. So, the Asha working is being encouraged from the community healthcare services is being encouraged from this Chhattisgarh's Mithanin. The article goes on to say that Asha workers have to be properly rewarded for their works because now they have become universally acclaimed, so that the World Health Organization have themselves encouraged by giving them leadership awards 2020. In the village level, Asha workers are in partnership with Anganwadi workers, auxiliary nurse midwives, So these three persons, all women team, are helping the sanitation, the healthcare, and the immunization of the village level and urban level people. The article says that the accountability of the Asha workers is manifold, and therefore a very much improvement in their salary and the insurance schemes must be extended to them. This is very much necessary so that to encourage them, even considering them as government employees, is also being highlighted in this. The article concludes by saying that the WHO's recognition for Asha workers is a very proud moment, and we must encourage the Asha workers by remunerating them properly and extending some more benefits so that we could not have imagined the COVID pandemic management without the Asha workers, Anganwadi workers, and the auxiliary nurse midwives, the all women team. Friends, the next article which I am going to discuss is the challenge of reforming death penalty. Recently, there have been lots of discussions on this aspect, whether the lower courts are fair in avoiding death sentences. Lots of articles have been written about this. Yesterday also I discussed one article regarding Perari violence case. So a few days back I discussed an article written by a prominent advocate regarding the mitigating circumstances, the ratio decidenti of the death penalty sentencing. It has often been seen that in the past 40 years after the Bachchan Singh case, death penalty has been awarded on the basis of the crime alone. The rarest of the rare factor is being very much arbitrarily applied in awarding death sentencing by the lower courts. Though the ratio decidenti, which had been fixed by the Bachchan Singh case 42 years ago, had to be applied, but the lower courts have never applied the fairness of the judgment. Recently, the Supreme Court, in 13 of the cases, 10 have been given, 10 cases have been, the judgment has been given, out of which most of them have been left free, 3 of them have been freed, and rest of them the sentencing has been commuted. Commuted means reduced. The death penalty has been reduced to life imprisonment. Recently, so Supreme Court in the case of Manoj and others versus State of Madhya Pradesh has held that certain social factors must also be taken into account while deciding the death penalty. That is fairness approach. The social factors, most of the death penalty sentencing has been awarded to poor people. So, the access to education, the access to basic health, the access to housing, the previous records of the criminal, whether he has been a criminal throughout or the frustrations developed while developing as an adult from that is the moral suasion which he has received from the childhood days influence the crime has to be seen. This Bachchan Singh case and the Manoj and others case should be taken as a byword by the lower courts is what the article is all about. There is something called mitigating factors. Even the behavior of the criminal in the prison has to be taken into account. More than legal experts, the criminologists, the psychologists and the other professionals have to be roped in to decide whether the criminal who has been awarded death sentence needs a rethink on his sentencing or not. This is a very beautiful article. I need not say lots of articles have appeared like this, and this is making a great cause for discussion these days whether the fairness of the death penalty has been properly met by the courts in India. Friends, now let me discuss the articles discussed in the business line. The first article to be discussed is the editorial A Job at Hand. What does it say? Recently, the Prime Minister's Economic Advisory Council has recommended a similar to MNREGS scheme in urban areas because there is a reverse migration from cities to villages, and MNREGS scheme is not sufficient for villages now because most of them have taken up the farming. So there is a crisis happening in cities. The workers in cities are suffering and they are not getting jobs out of employment anywhere. So government must step in to make the likelihood of a scheme like MNREGS applicable to urban areas is what the Economic Advisory Councils recommend. The article says that the urban workforce can be divided into two. Those who are living just for a sustenance, those who are working only for a sustenance. For them, the community kitchens are enough during the lockdowns. For the second one is those who want to improve their living standards. For them, a skilling, a training in skill is very much necessary. Recently, when the lockdowns were imposed, the rural population were saved because they were signed up for the Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Yojana under the Food Security Act. So they got food. But what about the urban poor, the rickshawalas, the barbers, the daily wage workers? They were not signed up for the Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Yojana and they suffered. They were not signed up for the Jan Dhan program and they suffered. The article draws attention to the fact that the exact MNREGs cannot be applied to rural or to urban areas because unlike their rural counterparts, the urban workforce is diverse. In village areas, in rural areas, MNREGs works only a off-season working when the agricultural workers are away from the farms. However, in urban situation, this is a different kind of situation which is prevailing because the urban workforce needs work every day. So, the scheme which they have to introduce for the urban population must be fine tuned to the urban population, is what the article is. The next article is titled A Structural Reset During Modi Government Years. What does it say about the structural reset which happened? Structural reset means there were certain sectors which were not available to the population of India. And during the Modi government, a structural reset has happened. For example, till 2013, many of the rural areas were not electrified, and this has been structurally reformed. And now most of the villages have electrification. Another problem which the Indian population faced was lack of sanitation. We know that with the introduction of water pipes and water reach, to most of the villages and cities. This has been very much structurally solved. So, this is a second structural reset which has happened during these 8 years. Take the case of availability of LPG cylinders. With the government's Ujjwal scheme, it has reached most households. Then the subsidized housing, and it has reached most of the house. The article says that the village people were at the bottom of the pyramid. Most of their urban counterparts enjoyed so many necessities of life which were not available to the rural population. Now, with the structural reset happening in these 8 years, the rural households also have access to most of the necessities which their urban counterparts were enjoying. So, the requirement of enhancing the livelihood of Indians has been made successful this structural. The article says that what has helped the government in doing this possible is that the proliferation of Aadhaar and Jan Dhan accounts. So, this has made the targeted delivery possible. The article uses the phrase targeted delivery. Mind you, the article goes on to discuss that the key to India's growth engine is the mobility of factors like labor, capital, and land. The labor mobility has been ensured with the codification of labor laws. Recently, the government has codified the 44 labor laws into one. And with the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code 2016, the mobility of capital has been ensured. And with the divestment plans of government, the PSU divestment plans of the government, the mobility of land has been ensured. The mobility of land has been ensured. The article says that government has been very much shrewd on its fiscal front. That is, during the pandemic the days, there was a hue and cry to increase the revenue expenditure. The government has not done it, and therefore the fiscal prudence has helped India to save its economy. The next structural reform is the biggest reform of the millennium, which is the introduction of goods and service tax. The introduction of and service tax has increased the compliance aspect and the law abiding traders and service providers, and it has also increased the government's revenues. The coming years, the article expects that the government will root out poverty from India. So, a structural reset in poverty alleviation is necessary in the coming years, is the conclusion of this article. By divesting its PSUs, the government has exited the economic space and focusing a lot on the social space. This is a remarkable achievement of the 8 year rule of the Modi government, is what the article says about. My dear friends, friends, the next article is by R. Srinivasan, the senior journalist and editor of the Businessline. The editorial is titled India May Miss the Sustainable Tourism. The article begins by saying the the aeroplane booking, the air flights booking. That is there is an online search engine called a Skyscanner. The Skyscanner is focusing not only the economic flights or the best comfort which is being decided while booking the flights, but the sustainable factors. That is the factors which help in saving the environment. The booking is based upon the sustainable environmental factors along with the price of the tickets and other amenities available in the flight. So, India is focusing on a tourism. After the pandemic levels, the tourism has improved. However, recently, the Central University of Kerala has pointed out that the Indian government is not focusing on sustainable tourism. The Indian government is not focusing on bringing to book the crimes related to the environment while devising its tourism strategy. Hence, we are about to miss the sustainable tourism bus. Most of the world, even the flights now have made it imperative to go for a sustainable drive. The article says that the customers of the flight, the passengers of the flight, never mind even losing money if it means to save the environment. The sustainable development of the aviation sector is a preliminary step for the sustainable tourism. The article goes on to say that India has to focus on its sustainable tourism. We have missed the sustainable development bus and even the sustainable tourism bus.